Get out. I'm gonna film our anniversary video. Ah, no, my nipple, no! The things I do for love!
You sweated my tushy first.
Fair. What's up, guys? My name is J-Rod of battlebrawlerproductions. Your channel welcome and craft amazing comic book style illustrations, variety of different mediums. Today is a very special video because it's the anniversary episode. Me and my wife are celebrating 3 years married. But in addition to that, it's also my wife's last semester of nursing school, where she'll be a full registered nurse at the end of the year. So to celebrate all these monumental moments, I wanted to craft a piece of artwork for her. I wanted to make something really special that came from the heart. And not to toot my own horn, I think I've come up with something truly special for her. After 4 hours of hard work, I'm ready to bring this piece to life with some ink and share it with you. The name of this piece is "To Do No Harm." A phrase often associated with the Hippocratic Oath, this piece incorporates different elements of not only my wife's passion and profession, but also our love of history, D&D, fantasy, and classical ink illustrations. This piece is going to be something that I'm really going to pour my heart and soul into. Might get a little emotional, we'll see. So let's not waste any more time and get that super time lapse started. Breaking out my Speedball dip pen, I'm using a 512 nib, which is my preferred nib for illustration work because of its control line variety. I'm also using one of my favorite inks, the Winsor Newton Black Drawing India ink. It has a rich black and is super smooth in my dip pen and also with a brush. I'm going in with this piece starting off not with the character, but the background tree elements. I know that this is going to be a lot of work that I need to do for this piece, especially later on, but I really want to just kind of go in with a nice little calm mentality. And I think the best spot for that are those trees. I don't want to go in guns blazing on the face. I don't want to start with some of the thinner, more finicky elements. I kind of just want to take my time and just start warming up on the piece, especially the more detailed and heavily rendered ones. I'm going for an interesting style and approach with this piece that I really need to get right, so warming up with the background is honestly a good start. Now, one thing that I'm keeping in mind when I'm inking these trees is how the light will affect them. So I'm making sure that I'm keeping my line variety not just varied, but also making sure that my thick to thin lines are placed properly to ensure that I get the three-dimensional look I'm going for. Now with the initial outline of the trees done, it was time to start working on the character, and I did switch up my tool. I'm using my Speedball quill nib, specifically a 101. I just really like the slight firmness that it has, so it's able to give me a lot of precision and line variety, especially when it comes to those tiny details. Interestingly, I did find later on that I just wasn't getting the sharpness that I initially wanted from either, so I went in with some normal microns just to sharpen and clean up the lines to really give it that edge that I was looking for. But as for now in this step, it was doing what I needed. Now in this stage, I'm pretty much just getting the initial first lines down, and I'm not really focusing too much on hatching or cross hatching, but I still do want to set myself up for success, so I am constantly thinking about the light source for this piece. Since this is going to be a heavily mooded, dramatic piece, I want to make sure that my line variety, including where I'm putting my thick to thin lines, follow suit. So I'm doing a lot of thinking in this stage. I'm really taking my time to ensure that I get that three-dimensional look that I want, that I will enhance later on as I work on the piece more. Also, while I'm in this stage, I'm going to color in some of the areas of black that are easier to do with my dip pen than a brush. I'm also going to be breaking out a couple stencils to ensure that these circles are looking good, and I'm also switching up between my dip pen, quill, and microns. One thing that I love about dip pens is the line variety that I can get with them, but one of the challenges about using these tools is that they do unfortunately struggle with consistent lines, so when I want to go in with a very specific effect, it can be a bit challenging. It requires a little bit more skills than a steady hand. They're also super easy to smear with a ruler. Now, I use a corkback ruler to avoid smearing, but that unfortunately can cause issues with accuracy as my lines don't line up exactly where I want them. And that also translates to stencils as well, which is why I'm using those stencils with microns, just to avoid any smearing. Now, if I do make a mistake, which yes, I did make quite a few mistakes in this piece, I am using white acrylic wash. I specifically like Holbein's acrylic wash. I feel like it's very opaque and very strong, and it layers really well on my smooth Bristol. Going in again with more of my stencils, I'm really trying to focus on the bottom right part of her dress and the tools on her belt. Now, fun fact, these are actual medical tools I found when doing some research, and these were all used around the 1800s, which I thought was pretty interesting. The idea of the piece is that this is a traveling doctor. It's supposed to evoke the image of the lady with the lamp, but with a fantasy twist. Now, I've shown this to several of my friends, and they absolutely agree that this needs to be Sarah's D&D character. I think that is absolutely amazing, and if you guys have a name for this character, let me know, because I'm really curious to see what you guys would name her. Now, this may seem very tedious for some people, and I totally understand that. This is not for everyone. This is a style that a lot of illustrators just do not do anymore, and I get it. But I really love the look of this. I really love working on it, and while it is extremely time consuming and I am pushing my patience as far as it can go, I just think that it's worth it, and I get something that looks truly amazing and beautiful. And this is for my wife. I really want to make sure that I'm doing a good job. So I'm really focusing on these tools. I'm making sure that I'm rendering them correctly. I'm really making sure they're clean. I'm really taking my time, especially with the more delicate areas, because I want something that's going to look absolutely amazing and just make something as good as I can make it. Now, there were several points of this piece that were very challenging, and while you may think the tools were definitely up there, I have to say the next two elements were some of the most challenging, that being the DNA and the lamp. Now, both these elements have to be absolutely perfect in my mind. These are major focal points of the piece. Later on, when we go in with the heavy hatching, emphasis on heavy, this took several hours to do, these pieces become focal points, not only just in the lighting, but they are the pieces that take up the hands of the character, tend to be big focal points and draw the eye to. So I really want to make sure that I have something that looks really good. Now, to make the DNA, like with the tools, I did quite a bit of research to ensure that I would have something that looked not just good, but also felt right. And the idea of this character, this plague doctor, carrying the DNA of her patients to heal and fix it, or even her own DNA to take apart and repair it so that it can help others. Maybe it's like part of her cure. I don't know, but I really just love the visual of the DNA strand physically in her hand being repaired. Now, I had quite a few options that I could have gone down this route. I ended up going with a little bit more traditional combined with science. When you look up DNA strands, you have the more traditional kind of like ribbon illustration that we're all used to, and then you also have the more scientifically accurate DNA strand built up of the proteins. So I decided to combine them, have that more classic ribbon flow illustrated look that we're used to, but I wanted to combine it with some of the proteins that would be floating around the DNA to help give it just a little bit more impact and a little bit more uniqueness. One of the other elements about this piece that I was really struggling with was that texture on the lamp, because I wanted to have a texture, I wanted to read metal, but I also wanted to read three-dimensional, and I don't want it to feel flat. I feel like later on I achieved that really well, but at this point I was definitely struggling to try and figure out how am I going to do this. These elements were just so important to the piece, and I wanted to make sure that it looked good. So not only did I break out my stencil to ensure that the circles look like circles, but I really took my time to make sure that the line variety was not just subtle, but also exactly what the piece needed to not just stay interesting and visually consistent, but feel right. I am a big fan of Bernie Wrightson. I genuinely think he is possibly the greatest ink artist of all time. And one thing that I like about his work is his ability to use hatching to communicate light so effectively. So I took my ruler, lined it up with the light source, that being that little cross on the moth, and took my 005 micron and just started drawing lines one by one. Now, I did have a guide. I took a few different size circle stencils and I lined those up to that point. So I knew that I was going to have an area with almost no ink to 50% ink to 80% ink and then to 100% ink. But I want to make sure that I have a smooth gradient and transition between those layers. That's just taking my time and going through this one by one and line by line. Not just using my 005 micron, I broke out my 03, 02, 05, and even my 12 to really help with that transition to make it as smooth as possible. And I'm really glad that I went ahead and just tried this effect because I love how it looks. I'm so proud of how it came out. This is probably one of my absolute most favorite things that I have experimented and just tried, and it really came out to be something special. I have probably sped up my development of arthritis by 20 years, but it was worth it. I mentioned earlier in the voiceover that I was really struggling on how I was going to render this piece and bring it to life. I want it to read as an old beat up lantern. I don't want it to be new, but I also don't want it to be flat, and I don't want heavy white lighting on it, so I was really trying to figure out what I wanted. And what I ended up doing was something quite different from what I normally do, but also something I have done. So for those of you who remember when I spent 50 hours drawing and painting Cthulhu, I used a 80% hatching effect on his hand. That way a little bit more green would be shown on it when I went to do the coloring, so that it would be more clear and easy to read that his hand was closer to the viewer than the rest of his body, but still keep it in shadow. I pretty much decided to do the same thing here. So I started this out by going in with a brush to get 100% black in, except for the edges, and then pretty much work to blend those in. At first I went up and down, then left to right, then diagonal, then the other diagonal. Pretty much I'm going in and just filling in the area to get as little white showing, but still keeping just enough to read clearly to the viewer. And you know what? I think I did pretty good. At this point in the illustration, I figured it was time for a little break. And what I mean by that is not focusing on one big area, but a few small little areas. I focused on the masks, the sleeves, and just was making sure that everything looked where I wanted it. If it needed more blending, if it needed a little more sharpening, if it needed just a little bit more direction, that's pretty much what I did here. After that little break, it was time to go in and work on shading the trees. Now this is a really fun process, at least for me. The first thing I did was do the normal wood lines that you would expect on a tree, and then went in to do heavy shading. So I decided to have the rim lining also be on the other side of the tree, which in my research, and by that I mean going outside with a flashlight and pointing it at trees in my neighborhood, I think I ended up on a list somehow, and I don't want to know what my neighbors think about me now, but either way, it was worth it because I did see a similar effect happen. Now, granted, it was not exactly what I illustrated, but it still looked pretty cool and confirmed what I was going for. It's time to give some TLC to the doctor herself. And let me tell you, I had more fun shading and bringing her to life than anything else during this entire process. Being able to accentuate the folds of her clothing and uniform, making sure that the directions of the lighting on her hand follow the flow of the glove to give her a stronger appearance as an inker is what I love to do. This is what I love about my medium so much, and I can't wait to do colors on this piece. We're gonna save that for another video. This is just one of those steps where, yes, it's towards the end, so I had to do a lot of work to get here. Absolutely worth it because it does so much to transform this piece and create something that I think is really cool. And here we are in the home stretch, and this is pretty much the cleanup stage before I remove the tape. I'm going in with that white acrylic wash to fix any mistakes that I made, to ensure that my lines are clean, there's no smudging, there's no smearing, everything's intentional, and to also add that little pop of white to where the piece needs it the most. Ensuring that when you see this in the scans or you see this in person, you have something that looks good, is nice, clean, and as great as I can make it. Because I'm not making this piece for myself, I'm making it for the most important person in my life. With that said, let's go ahead and remove the tape and take a look at this piece in all its finished glory. So here we are. After close to 20 hours of hard work, I have a framed piece of artwork that I'm ready to give the love of my life. Let's go ahead and give this to her. Follow me. Here we are with my amazing, beautiful, wonderful, perfect wife. I did not want to make a portrait of you. I did not want to make you in art form. I wanted to capture your interest, your passion, something that as cool as you are.
Honestly, this is the most amazing gift I think you've given me. I absolutely love this. She is gorgeous. Everything about like what I love about medicine, you've incorporated this in some way or another.
No.
You even put a moth in there, which honestly, I absolutely love moths. It's probably one of my favorite pieces, I think.
And I just want to say happy anniversary. So, with that said, thank you all so much for following me, the journey making this very personal, epic piece of artwork with this very amazing, perfect person. By the way, I want to thank all of you guys for the positive messages we got on Sarah's journey through school.
Thank you so much.
So thank you guys so much. It really does mean the world to us to see the support. So if you want to subscribe, go ahead. If you want to leave a like, go ahead. Check out some videos. You guys know normal YouTube jazz. But more importantly, I want to thank you all so much for the support, following us on our journey. We're 3 years into our marriage, and we're going to go to what? 100? 100 years?
Yeah, let's try it.
Yeah! To 100 years.